How's it going, everyone? Sorry from Weather SpongeBob. That was today. It's September 27, 2021, and today we're gonna take a look at 4 tropical disturbances which are currently roaming in the Atlantic and see if any of them pose any imminent threat to land and if we could see more hurricanes this hurricane season. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather accounts. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather accounts. So let's begin by taking a look at a 5-day tropical weather outlook provided from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, and you see that right now it's very active in the Atlantic hurricane season as we have 4 disturbances we are currently watching. We of course have major Hurricane Sam, which has weakened quite a bit from its 150 mile per hour status, but it's still a very strong category 3 hurricane at 120 miles per hour. And we also have 2 other disturbances coming off the coast of Africa, which will likely form into Tropical Storm Victor and Wanda in the very near future, where they both have an 80% chance of tropical cyclone formation within the next 5 days and a 50% chance within the next 48 hours. We also have this other disturbance which more likely than not will eventually develop, and if it were to develop, it'll develop into Tropical Storm Alpha, which would mean that we have reached a point where we've ran out of traditional hurricane names for 2021 hurricane season, that now we're going to have to start using Greek alphabet to name future tropical cyclones in 2021 hurricane season. So it really shows the magnitude of how active this hurricane season has been. It's up there. The 2 only other times where we had to use Greek alphabet to name tropical cyclones was during the 2005 hurricane season and obviously last year during the 2020 hurricane season. And now it seems like it's going to happen for a second consecutive year, which would mean that only 3 out of hundreds or tens of years we're going to experience just another very active hurricane season, which is definitely not something that isn't good news at all. But the good news is that I'd say a lot of these storms were fish storms, so they didn't affect land much, and let's hope it continues that way. But let's begin by taking a look at these 2 tropical disturbances coming off the coast of Africa at this time. And if we were to take a look at Invest 90L, it's coming off the coast of Africa at this point. And if we were to take a look at the water vapor imagery, you see that there's a large area of disorganized showers just off the west coast of Africa at this time, and we have a lot of thunderstorm activity occurring in this area. And there's a little bit of lower level low that has formed in this area, which is why there's the National Hurricane Center considered this area an invest and this area further westward not in invest just yet, despite having similar chances of formation, because this already has a well-defined lower level center, while this area doesn't really have that lower level center just yet. But that's quickly about to change within the next 48 hours. And you see that while the thunderstorm activity is quite disorganized at this point, you see that the atmosphere is very moist in this region. There isn't a lot of dry air entraining the scattered thunderstorm activity, and you see that the wind shear is relatively light. You see that these thunderstorms aren't moving very quickly, which represents that the wind shear is very light in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So as a result, this does have more than a conducive enough environment for it to develop eventually into Tropical Storm Victor and Wanda in the very near future. Now taking a look at the forecast for these next 2 tropical cyclones. Let's first take a look at the GFS model, and let's take a look at what strength the GFS model decides to bring this to. And to determine what strength we're going to see Tropical Storm Wanda and Tropical Storm Victor develop into, we're going to need to see how much wind shear there is in the atmosphere. You see that the wind shear is relatively light for a lot of the main development region, which certainly isn't good news, and it's one of the primary reasons why these 2 disturbances are expected to develop eventually into Tropical Storm Victor and Tropical Storm Wanda. However, as Sam moves further northward, we're going to see an increased amount of wind shear throughout the main development region I'd say in the later future. I'm talking around 5 to 6 days from now, which is certainly good news, and it should limit this storm from really developing very much. And there's a very good possibility that by the time the 5 or 6 day rolls around, we're gonna see these two disturbances completely die out in the main Devon region as a result of strong wind shear. And the reason why we're gonna see stronger wind shear is because we're gonna see this upper level low that's located just to the north of the main Devon region move further southward. That should enhance the wind shear in the main Devon region a little bit. And not only that, this upper level low will bring upper level winds that are going against the typical trade winds in the lower levels of the atmosphere, which means that the wind shear as this upper level low moves further southward will be stronger than what you typically see in the main Devon region when there's stronger upper level winds, because the winds will be going against the lower level winds rather than with the lower level winds like we've been seeing all hurricane season. So it should certainly enhance the wind shear in that region. And not only that, we're now entering the fall at this point. We're now entering October, and this is a point where we're going to begin to see a lot more troughs dip down into the Atlantic, including the main Devon region, which should make it more difficult typically for tropical cyclones to develop under wind shear this hostile, as we're going to see more troughs move southward, which would mean that we're going to see the westerly winds move more southward as a result of that. So it should inhibit tropical cyclone development in the future as we get later and later into the fall months, obviously. And since we're entering the month of October, it's almost expected we're going to see the wind shear begin to enhance. And that's exactly what's happening, because in August, this much dips in the westerly winds aren't very typical. But now, since we're going to enter the month of October very, very soon, we're going to see more of those troughs move further southward. We're going to see those big jet stream dips, which would enhance the wind shear all throughout the Atlantic. And as a result, we're going to see the storm struggle in the midst of all of that, where we're going to see that the westerly winds move further southward. So currently the GFS model wants to completely kill off this storm right around the 6 to 7 day mark. But again, there's still a lot of uncertainty. We need to wait and see how far south this jet stream dips, and also who knows, maybe this upper level low could move further northward and this low somehow avoids the wind shear. However, at this point, it seems like the GFS model is leaning towards developing this early, maybe down to as low as 982, which would make this hurricane status. However, it expects it to quickly weaken as a result of the enhanced amount of wind shear that it's going to experience as it approaches the Caribbean, which would certainly be good news. And the moisture or the relative humidity won't also help at all, because we're going to see the dry air begin to filter into this storm as it approaches the Caribbean as the wind shear increases. And since the upper level winds will increase, so will the entrainment of dry air into the center of circulation, and that should inhibit this storm from developing beyond the 6 day mark. There's still a lot of uncertainty. We still have to wait and see how much dry air there exactly will be, and where this upper level low will be located, and where this trough will move, how far south this trough will move. But at this point, it seems more likely than not we're going to see the storm die out as it approaches the Caribbean. But again, I'll make sure to update you guys if we do get any more updates. And the European model agrees with it, which enhances the confidence that this will eventually die out in the eventually in the middle of the Atlantic. And as for Invest 90L, which is just behind it, the European model expects this to drift northward, which would definitely be good news, and pretty much get absorbed by potentially another trough moving through and just drift out to sea, which would certainly be the best case scenario. We need to wait and see if this is all correct, but based off of what the two main computer models are saying, even in the long-term future, that they're both agreeing that this will eventually die out in the middle of the wind shear and the dry air, there's higher confidence that that will happen in the long-term future. But again, there's still uncertainty, and I want to emphasize that. But I'll make sure to update you guys as we get more updates. But in the computer models, and taking a look at the model intensity guidance for Invest 90L, you see that majority of them do eventually strengthen this into a tropical storm, with a few getting it up to category 1 status, which I wouldn't rule out of the possibilities, and going right around the 7-day mark. Some do weaken it or completely kill it at this point, like HMNI model intensity, the computer model, but there's still a good amount that remain this at tropical storm status. So again, there's still uncertainty regarding if this will survive in the midst of the wind shear or the dry air ahead of it. But I'll update you guys once we get more confidence and once we get closer to that time frame for more reliable forecasts to happen. And if we were to take a look at where exactly the computer models want to take this, they're all agreeing that they want to take this further northward, because we're going to begin to see a weakness in the ridging in this region as a result of a prominent upper level low that I was talking to you guys about. And we're going to see this drift northward, which is currently the most likely scenario, which is certainly good news. So while this may develop into Tropical Storm Victor and Wanda, the good news is that there's a good possibility that this will die. This will eventually die in the main development region as a result of strong wind shear and a large amount of dry air. But I wouldn't rule out any possibility just yet, and make sure to keep an eye on this, at least in the Caribbean, because you never know with these tropical cyclones, as they could be very unpredictable, especially when we're talking about a long-term forecast. Now, taking a look at my forecasted path, I'm expecting Tropical Storm Wanda to move around this vicinity, maybe move slightly northward, and I'm expecting Tropical Storm Victor to move closer to the Caribbean, but it might die by this point or might fizzle out completely as a result of the abundance of dry air in the region. But again, this is subject to change, so make sure to stay tuned for more updates. Now, taking a look at our next tropical cyclone we are currently watching, we of course have Hurricane Sam, which is just to the east of the Caribbean at this time, and it's moving around at a clip at around northwest to northwest at around 12 miles per hour, and it's expecting to gain speed as it moves northward, as the ridging becomes a little bit stronger, and that should steer it further northward faster. Now, the worry about Hurricane Sam was that it might have been caught up with an upper level. It might get tangled up with an upper level low and a dominating ridge along the east coast of the U.S., and that could potentially steer it into the United States. However, I'd say at this point the chance is nearly impossible at this point, as it seems like none of the computer models are really confident that there's going to be a strong enough of an upper level low or a strong enough of a ridge to steer this further eastward, as most likely scenario is that this moves northward and mostly becomes a fish storm. I'll say mostly because there is that possibility it could come close to the small island of Bermuda. So Bermuda, you certainly need to pay close attention to this, because even by the time we reach Friday and Saturday as it moves northward, it's still expected to stay at major hurricane status, and that's something you definitely do not want to underestimate in the island of Bermuda. So make sure to at least be aware of this, and there's still that possibility this could take the eastward track and you get more impacts. However, there is also hope where this could go in the further eastward track. I meant to say westward in this area, my bad, but there is that possibility this could take the far eastward track, which would mean that you guys will miss out on pretty much most of the impacts. But we still have to wait and see, and we won't really have a very confident forecast of where exactly this will go. I'd say right around 1 to 2 days before. So at least be aware of this in Bermuda and potentially prepare, because it's better to be safe than sorry when it comes to major hurricanes that are coming close to your area like this. So make sure to at least keep an eye on it in Bermuda. However, outside of the impacts in Bermuda, while this may stay miles offshore the United States, like the GFS model is stating in this model run, there is that worry of a rip current risk and potentially coastal flooding in the more vulnerable areas during high tide. And it isn't very untypical for certain areas, especially in Florida or low-lying areas, that during a high tide and even during normal lunar tides or high tides, we see coastal flooding occur even during a completely regular day with no tropical cyclone nearby. But in this case, we're going to see Hurricane Sam. While it's going to be hundreds of miles offshore, it should elevate the wave heights along the coast. If we were to take a look at the wave heights right now, it's mainly right around 2 to 3 feet at this point. But you're going to see as Hurricane Sam comes closer, you're going to see the wave heights increase quite a bit to around 5 feet right around the coast of Florida. And this extends further northward, where we're seeing readings of swells of 5.2 feet. And it should certainly increase the wave heights along the coast. And that definitely raises a concern of rip currents and as well as coastal flooding in low-lying areas. So if you live in an area that's very prone to flooding, especially in the low-lying areas along the coast, you need to be aware of Hurricane Sam as it moves northward, because it could certainly bring those swells up and bring some coastal flooding in the more vulnerable areas. So keep that in mind if you're along the coast, and make sure to be aware of rip currents. And if there's a high rip current risk, like what is expected this weekend, it's better to just stay out of the water, because unfortunately rip currents are one of the leading causes of weather-related deaths in the United States, and it's upsetting because it's one of the most avoidable deaths. As long as you just stay out of the water, you'll be safe. So make sure to if there's a high rip current risk, to just stay out of the water, because it could certainly save your life. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for this video. I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. And I hope you guys have a good day.